also for the opportunity to share with you an amazing story. Many of you had the heart and the opportunity to visit my house about 1 year ago. Not all of you, but many of you. And you met my wife, who was walking out her own faith as she battled a severe case of cancer. And the Christian community in Tuscaloosa stood behind us, particularly Church of the Highlands, but other churches as well came out. We were very involved in the community, and we had a lot of prayer. Janice lost her battle with cancer 1 year ago. So this is a particularly difficult season because it was right now when we were facing that. That said, what actually happened was a really incredible miracle. It's really a phenomenal story. And I know in my heart of hearts that it's important that I share with you what really happened, because it's not obvious. You wouldn't know the details. You wouldn't know the backstory. And so you have to hear the story. If you will let this testimony I'm going to share penetrate your heart, and you'll meditate on it a bit, it will be, I truly believe, life-changing. I truly believe that. I will tell you, you're getting a preview. The story I have shared with some pastors. I've shared it with all the pastors at Highlands. They were incredibly anxious for me to get to you all. So, but you know, finals has a way of getting in the way of all that. I understand. There's a national ministry, home-based in Dallas, Texas, of all places, that has heard this story, and they've contacted me, and they're going to publish it nationally. Wow. So that's all about to happen. And there's been some other things that have developed. But I was really, really, really committed to sharing this testimony with this group. Lars and Manny and the others been to the house many times and saw what happened, but you don't have the backstory. So if you'll allow me, this is a little bit of a windy road, so don't get frustrated. It's not a really, so just bear with me. I'll not waste your time, I promise. I absolutely promise I won't waste your time. But without the explanation, you'll miss the testimony. So I have to go back and share what actually happened. My wife Janice and I, we met when she was a senior in college. We got married right after she graduated. And we were married for 44 years. And during that time, we traveled around the country. We did different kinds of things, which when I look back on that, even that was remarkable, because everywhere we seemed to go, we ended up in a community that somehow had a revival, and we got to participate in all kinds of revivals and things. It was really, you look back and you say, I don't know how that happened. Well, you can't plan it. You wouldn't know. So we experienced, I want you to understand, we experienced the miraculous. We really did. We saw it. So we had a high degree of faith that the Lord could do anything, which of course He can. So that's kind of was our backstory. So we lived across the country, and we enjoyed serving the Lord, and we saw some amazing things. About 3 years after we were married, we were living, I'd come back to graduate school, and we were living in Champaign, Illinois, which is in the middle of Corn Belt, USA. And that's where we were. And at the time, I had just finished up some graduate work, and I had taken a job with the Corps of Engineers, and so I was traveling all the time. So every week I'd be on the road somewhere. Janice, by background, my wife by background is a chemist, and so she had a job with a large corporation there in the community, and she worked in the lab. But as the story unfolded, what actually happened, and it's important to give you some backstory because this will all start to make sense in just a moment. And I'll try not to make this long, I promise.
Take your time.
Take your time.
So we decided before winter set in, and this was before we had children, so it's just the two of us, we wanted to take a grand vacation, and we were tired of seeing corn. And so we got on a plane and we traveled to Mount Rainier National Park on the West Coast. And we decided, the two of us, we were just going to have one fun, hiking adventure in the mountains and stuff. But we didn't know what we were doing. We just enjoyed the scenery and all. We got back to Illinois and discovered Janice had, in the course of hiking with, not the right shoes or anything else, she had done some significant damage to her foot. So we went to see a physician, and she ends up in a cast and told that she's going to take a while to heal and this is going to be a problem, and that she would ultimately be okay. About that time, though, in the Midwest, winter set in, and it set in hard. And so it was snow and ice and terrible, and I'm having to travel, so I'm gone all the time. And Janice was trying to get to work on crutches and with the cast and all of this, and it just wasn't possible. So thankfully her employer said, here's what you need to do, just stay home. Just stay home for a couple of months and heal, and you can come back to work. And that sounded like a real blessing. And so I wasn't worried about her. She could get around the house really pretty well, and I would be on the road and I'd come back, and I noticed every time I came back she was a little more lethargic, and I just at the time thought, well, she's coping with all the things she's coping with, and we weren't too worried about it. But as winter set in hard and the temperatures dropped and the weather was very, very cold, she stayed in the house all the time. It wasn't wise for her to go out with crutches and cast and all of that and ice and snow. So she basically stayed homebound, thinking it was for just a couple of months and she would start to be better, but she just kept getting worse. We ended up going to the doctor. Some of you have heard this part of the story, but it's really significant. We went to the doctor and he said something was seriously wrong, but we don't know what. She began to debilitate. By the time we get to the holiday season, she is really, really in bad shape. We go to the hospital again, and they didn't know what was wrong. The doctor asked me to step out in the hallway, and he told me that I was likely to lose her, and they really didn't know why. She debilitated to the point where I was having to, she couldn't really walk very well. I was having to lift and carry and do a lot of things. I became kind of a caregiver. It got so bad that right around the Christmas holiday, she asked me, she said, well, I need to see my family. I think she felt like she wasn't going to make it. And so we kind of had a family goodbye over the holidays. So I remember it all very vividly. As I approach this season, I always remember it very vividly. Right after Christmas and we're into January, it became evident that she wasn't going to make it. I'm staying home at this point. I'm starting to have, I'm not feeling well, but there was a lot of stress on me. and I'm trying to take care of her, and I felt kind of cruddy and headachy, but I wasn't processing that. We were living in a house that was an older home, and I was trying to renovate it, and there wasn't a lot of time to renovate it. I was now a caregiver, and I didn't know anything about caregiving, but I'm trying. And I remember one particular day in January, she was in bad shape, and I went down to the basement of the house to check on something. I don't remember why. And I hadn't gone in that basement very much because we were renovating, and I just didn't. I hadn't been down there in a while. But I did go down that particular day, and when I did, I saw the furnace for the house, and I noticed the furnace had black soot all around this furnace, which should not have been there. And immediately, I'm enough of an engineer to know that's not good. That's a problem. And so I called the power company immediately. They came out to the house within the hour, actually. And as the power company pulled into my driveway and approached my house, their carbon monoxide meters were alarming at a very, very high level. I opened the door. They would not come in the house. They said, the only thing they would say is, your house must be full of carbon monoxide. Who's in the house? Well, just me and my wife, and she's really bad off. And he said, well, she's full of carbon monoxide poisoning. What you need to do is immediately get her to the emergency room and get out of the house. I loaded her into the car. I remember carrying her into the car. We decided we'd drive rather than call an ambulance, and I just put her in the car. And as I'm putting her in the car, I watched as the power company put red caution tape and they condemned my house while I was loading the car. Was not going to be allowed back in the house. We drove to the hospital. It's a major hospital at the University of Illinois, so it was a very established, credible hospital. We had the test for carbon monoxide is called a blood gas test. It's actually quite painful. And so she endured the test, and the physician came and he sat down with me. And he pulled me out again in the hallway, and he said, so I have a problem. We think our blood gas machine, however they test that, is not operating correctly because it's saying that your wife is 300% lethal. And that's not humanly possible. That cannot be true. So we've consulted the physicians that there must be a flaw in the test or the machine. So we're going to send you to another hospital on the other side of town, and they're going to retest. So we got transported over to another hospital. They did another test. They sat down again afterward, and it was pretty painful. And she was in bad shape. I mean, she could barely lift her head. She was. So the physician again sat down with me, now second time, and said, I don't know what to tell you, but we've confirmed that your wife is 300% the lethal dose of carbon monoxide. Now he said, I've conferred with the first hospital, the results are identical, our machine's brand new, there's nothing wrong with the machine, here's the reality to me. He says, it is medically impossible for your wife to be alive. It is not medically possible. How she's alive, nobody knows. She's not in good shape. There's really nothing at this point we can do because it's throughout her whole body. And say your goodbyes. And how she's lived this long, we can't explain. And I remember we didn't really have a place to go because our house was condemned. And I'm told my wife's going to die. And boy, it was what do you do? And I remember she looked at me and she said, what day is it? And I said, it's Wednesday. And she said, take me to church, because they always had Wednesday night church. It seemed like a good plan for me because I didn't have a home to go to, so I was thinking I could get somebody out to church, you know. So I laid her in the seat. I drove to church. I literally, it was winter, it was central Illinois in the wintertime, and January particularly is just not good. So I remember vividly carrying her. I carried her and laid her on a pew in the church, and told the church what we had heard. And the church, it's just a little Midwest, there's corn all around the church. And they prayed for her. And that night, after they prayed for her, she got up. She threw her crutches. She literally ran around the church.
Come
she
on.
literally ran
Praise
around
God.
the church.
Wow.
She was instantly healed.
Wow.
Inexplicably, miraculously. She threw the crutches away. She asked to sing songs. She sang, she danced, she ran. It was a life-changing event for every single person that witnessed it. She never had she never had even one side effect. Wow. I mean, after that prayer, she was 100% healed. Wow. She went back to work like 2 days later.
Wow.
Wow. You can't make it up. I mean, it just, we witnessed it. It became legend at the church, and it had obviously life impact for us. We never experienced anything like that again. My career took us though to different parts of the country, and so we lived in Texas, and we lived in South Carolina. We lived different places, and everywhere we would go, we would end up in churches that seemed to have revivals, or so we kind of, and we loved it because we had experienced a miracle. And so to say my wife had faith would be an understatement.
Yeah.
She operated, her faith level was at a, kind of at a really high level. Obviously, if you've experienced the healing. All right. About 2023, we're living here in Tuscaloosa, and now it's years, decades later. And I hadn't, to be honest, I hadn't thought about this miracle in quite a while. And now I have children and grandchildren, and I just hadn't reflected on it in quite a while. And I remember we were on vacation in the summer, and for some reason I can't explain, all of this came back to me in just a flood of memories, and I couldn't shake it. And I told my wife, Janice, I said, I really feel like I'm supposed to drive back to Tuscaloosa, make an appointment at the time with Pastor Bubba, and I'm supposed to tell him this story all those years ago. And she said, well, you can do that after we get home from vacation. We're on vacation right now. I said, I got that. But she said, you're serious about this? I said, I don't know why. But I didn't know why. To be honest, I hadn't thought about it in a while. And then she knew I was serious about it, and she started reflecting on it, and she said, I don't know why you would feel so compelled to tell it now, like you can't wait 3 days till we get. I said, I can't. So I left her, at vacation, and she got a ride home with my daughter and her family. And I left and came back to Tuscaloosa and made an appointment to see Pastor Bubba. And I sat and told him the whole story, and he listened, and he looked at me like you would expect him to, and he said, well, why are you telling me this story? Yeah, it wasn't being disrespectful, he just like, why? I said, I don't really know why. But I know that if I know in my heart if I didn't tell you immediately, somehow that would have been displeasing to the Lord. And I don't quite know why, but so there's what I'm doing. So we had prayer. I left there, and what I had no way of knowing is within just a couple of weeks, my wife got diagnosed with stage 4 metastasized cancer. So she had breast cancer and metastasized, and it was now bone cancer, and it had spread, and we got a dire notice. I didn't know that was coming, and that happened in just a few weeks after I told Pastor Bubba. So, of course, our interpretation is the reason the Lord reminded us is because he's going to do it again. And that's exactly what our faith walk was. And so she got diagnosed. She had literally spent all those years kind of walking in the miraculous, knowing that God does healing. So to tell her that she wasn't going to get healed was just not on the table. I mean, that was just not that was not on the table. So she would just look at me, real matter of fact, and say, well, it's obvious why the Lord told you or reminded you about that experience, because I'm going to get healed again. It's just, I believed it. She believed. And so we had the test run, so I'm making this short. Are you all doing okay?
Yeah.
It gets better. So they run the analysis on Janice at UAB Hospital in Birmingham, and she's got the cancer is throughout her body, specifically in certain areas. She had a mass in her lymph node. They actually took a biopsy of that. They actually had the cancer material. They had all the X-rays. They did all the stuff. So we had all the documentation, but she's just not. I mean, they would look right at her and tell her, you know. They actually looked at her and said, "You've got 3 months to live." And she literally. I mean, you're not gonna believe me when I tell you this. We left UAB. I'm devastated. I mean, I'm just devastated. I mean, I just got briefed on these results. I saw the X-rays and the biopsy reports, and my world is shattered. And she looked at me and she literally said, "We get to the," she says, "Well, where do you want to go out to eat?" I don't want to go out and eat anywhere. I want to go anywhere. She goes, "Why?" Why? She goes, quote, "Well, you don't believe them, do you?" We went out to eat that night. Sure, I mean, you know, anyway.
That's right.
We went to Southern Ale House, and she got whatever she wanted. I mean, it was just, you know, like, Janice, why are we... Anyway, but we did. That's where her faith was. And so her cancer was so progressed that UAB felt like they couldn't do anything at all. I'm a husband, so I'm wanting to, we just got to do something. So I got us an appointment at MD Anderson, which is supposedly the top cancer hospital anywhere. And so we head out to Houston, Texas, and we get to see the best oncologist anywhere. And that made me feel good that I'm doing something, you know. We're praying I had a backup plan, you know. We're praying, she wasn't, but anyway. We went. And, so two things happened when we're at MD Anderson that you don't know about. One of them is MD Anderson is a huge complex. There's it's multiple blocks, actually, just buildings, all these very specialized medical professionals, but there's also hotels that are right there, and they have sky bridges, you know, and connect. So once you're there, you just stay there in hotels, and you go to all these appointments and get lab work and do all that. And I'm still trying to process the fact that they've told me she's got 3 months to live, and this is all so dire. And so we're out at MD Anderson, and everybody there's got cancer. So it's not a happy place. You know, you just it is what it is. And Janice would act like we're on vacation, you know. She wasn't experiencing any symptom. And so two things happened while we're there. I'm walking the Sky Bridge, and I'm trying to be honest, I'm trying to separate from her a little bit because I needed to pray. I was feeling distressed, and I've got anxiety through the roof, and I'm praying. And I just I left her, and I just went on I didn't leave her, but I was just kind of on my Sky Bridge walk, and the security guy, I guess that's who he was, comes up to me. I've never met him, obviously, and he comes up and he says, "God sent me to talk to you." Now, how do you start a conversation? And to be honest, I wasn't receptive because I don't know him. I don't know what, I'm trying to get my own thoughts, and he would not leave me alone. He said, he got right in my path, and he blocked me to where I couldn't walk, and he says, "I told you God sent me to talk to you, and you are going to listen." I kept trying to get around him, and he would block me, and he started telling me that God had a plan, and that I needed to understand that the plan might be different than what I think, but God has a plan, and he just kept, and finally I accepted that I needed to take this genuinely, and he's quoting scripture, and then he's praying. I mean, we're right in the middle of this Sky Bridge, and there's all these people, and he's preaching, literally preaching to me. I don't know who he is, and he's preaching to me, and he asked to pray for me, and we're there like 20 minutes, right on the Sky Bridge. So I was trying to process that. The next day, we got the results from all of the analytics at MD Anderson, and they had us come in and sit in the room, and they were all kind of baffled. They said they didn't know what was going on. They had all the results from UAB Hospital here in Birmingham that had been sent out, and they also had all the biopsies that showed the cancer, and that had been sent out. They actually had the tissue. So we're in this meeting, and the oncologist sits down with this renowned oncologist sits down and says, "Well, we don't know what to do with you." Well, how do you start a conversation now? Said the cancer in the lymph node of which we have the tissue, so we know it's cancerous, we've confirmed all that, we've got the biopsy, we've got the tissue, but it's completely disappeared, and we don't know what's going on. And they had the before images, and so they got so freaked out, they made her get she had to do it 3 times. Wow. So they made her do it over, then they made her do it over again, then they made her do it over again, and they said, "Well, apparently that's gone, and we don't know how that's gone, because that's not medically impossible." She had a large mass, and it just disappeared. She had masses in other parts of her body where it spread, and it was completely gone in about 70%, and the other 30% had shrunk like by 50%. So they just looked at her and said, "We got nothing. We don't know why. We can't explain why. Whatever healing is happening in your body is far better than what we could give you as treatment. We don't think you're going to. You really shouldn't be alive now, and we can't explain it." And Janice would just look at him and laugh and just say, "I told you, I told everybody." So we left him to Anderson, and she just said, "I told you, this is not to worry about." And so that was in January of 24. And so through January 24, if I have mine, let me think, make sure I've got those right. She did fine, and she did fine to everybody's astonishment. And then as the holiday season approached in 2024, all of a sudden she went off the cliff. She just went off the cliff. And we raised the alarm. Well, the church was very responsive, so y'all came out and prayed with her. And she would never, ever allow us to have prayer until she made me stand up and share the carbon monoxide poisoning healing. And you guys were there, you've heard me do it. So she would say, "Don't let anybody do anything or pray till first you give the testimony, so everybody understands God does the miraculous." So I gave the carbon monoxide testimony over and over and over again. Every church that came out, every youth group, every group of ministers that came out, everybody that visited, and they all heard the story. She would never let us do prayer without sharing the carbon monoxide healing, because it had been an instant and a complete healing. And we'd walk there. Well, now it seems like things are really bad. It's Christmas holiday season 24, and inexplicably she's not doing good. So this is where it gets fascinating. Y'all okay still? Or are you worn out already? So this is okay. She kind of went over the cliff, and then things started happening. She started seeing angels, and I documented all of it. And she would see angels, and it became evident that it was real. It wasn't just imaginary in her mind. I mean, she had become very weak and very debilitated, and then she would see an angel, and all of a sudden, even though she had her shoulders, the bones, bone cancer deteriorated the labrum in the shoulders and stuff, all of a sudden hands would raise. And then she would leave them raised for like over an hour. And you can't. Yeah. I mean, you can't do that. And then, and she would see other things. And I remember one time she looked at me and she said, "Ed, the angels are here." And of course I didn't see them, but I believed her. And she said, "We're supposed to take communion." Okay. We were actually watching. She wasn't able to get out at that point. We were watching a sermon on YouTube. To be honest, I don't even know who the guy he was. I was probably not as just worrying about her. So I said, "Well, communion now?" Or she goes, "Well, an angel just appeared and said we're supposed to take communion. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. But we're supposed to take communion." So I put it on pause. This is just one example. There's multiple examples of this. Just one. But I put it on pause. I went and got some juice and crackers, and I came back and I said, Janice, what? I don't know. Are we supposed to do it now? I mean, what are we supposed to do? I don't know. I want to do what you. She goes, I don't know, but the angel said that's what we're supposed to do. So, well, because I'm processing. I said, well, why don't we finish watching this sermon and then we'll do it. And I hit the play. I don't even know who I was watching, okay? I wasn't paying that. I was just in my own thread. And so help me, God is my witness. So I hit the play. 30 seconds later, this guy, I don't even know who he is, says, now I'm supposed to lead the church in communion. Janice just looks over and says, told you? So it's that kind of stuff over and over. So at least 8 different times, and I recorded them. She started having these visitations. And I'm trying to process all of that. In the meantime, I'm trying to figure out the carbon monoxide poisoning that we testified about, why we were suddenly off the cliff. And why, this is the part that really bothered, why miraculously heal her so that MD Anderson comes to me and says, we can't understand it, and then 9 months later it's all back again. Mm-hmm. And I'm struggling with that, to be honest. My wife's seeing angels, and I'm processing. 2 men came to see me at that time, privately. One was a pastor here locally, and another very godly man, independently asked to come see me. Both of them, unaware that the other one had talked to me, came to me and sat down and said that God had instructed them to tell me that I was to study and really understand the whole story of King Hezekiah. Now, both of these, one's a minister of a very large church, and the other one's a very godly man and independently, they came and sat down and had that discussion with me. Well, you know the story of King Hezekiah. King Hezekiah got diseased, and he's going to die. And he doesn't want to die. And he prays, and the prophet Isaiah comes into him and says, you're going to die. And Hezekiah weeps and cries and weeps and prays, and the Lord speaks to prophet Isaiah and says, tell the king I'll extend his life 15 more years. Now I've got 2 men, godly men, telling me to study and pray King Hezekiah, or just really understand King Hezekiah. So I interpreted that as I need to pray that God extend her life. So I did. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed King Hezekiah's prayer. And I knew that was from the Lord. So I prayed over and over and over again that God would extend her life, just as he had extended King Hezekiah, who had that disease. And then she died. She passed. And to say I had trouble with that would be an understatement. I watched her get healed miraculously all those years ago. We testified to it over and over. The testimony was so strong, it created revivals in churches all across the country. She gets diagnosed all these years later. God obviously healed her. MD Anderson is baffled how it all disappeared, and then right as the holidays, it all comes back and she passes. I couldn't understand it. And what about this King Hezekiah thing? Now I'm like So, Chris Hodges has a book called In the Cave, or Out of the Cave, I guess is the title. But, well, I was in the cave, I'll be honest. I have a strong relationship with the Lord. I've served Him all these years. But I just lost my wife. I'm really struggling, to be honest. I was struggling. And so for several months, I just tried to process it and prayed. And I kept coming back to the King Hezekiah thing because I knew that was God sent. And I've also seen these, I mean, I have the data from the hospitals. You know, here's the biopsy, tumor's gone. How's that possible? Well, I finally got it. And that's why I'm here to talk to you tonight. Because I was praying and the Lord just plain as day said to me in my spirit, it's almost like I heard His voice. He said, do the math. I like that because I'm an engineer. If we're going to do math. I like that. Do the math. So I went back and I started reflecting, and it occurred to me that what I was experiencing in the winter, last winter, 1 year ago, I was carrying her again. I was reliving everything I had experienced with the carbon monoxide. Then I got to reflecting on, not only was I experiencing the same thing, I was experiencing it at the very same season. Just as winter approached, just as the holidays approached, just as everything. Then I started saying, wait a minute, wait. And the night before she passed, the Lord kept just speaking to me about read Psalm 40, pray Psalm 40. And I kept hearing 40, pray 40. So I sent a blast out to every church the night before she passed. All my friends in all the churches, and they've been here a while. Probably, I don't know how many people got it. Asking them to pray Psalm 40 over my wife. Because I was going to lose her. And Psalm 40 is the very famous verse, chapter. It talks about, Lord, lift me out of the miry clay and set me on the rock. And Lord, come quickly. I need help. That's what the chapter's about. I had multiple churches again reach out to me the next day and say, that's not for Miss Janice, that's for you. I said, no, it's for her. I said, it's for you. Right now I'm reflecting on that. Okay, so here's what actually happened. So here's what happened. My wife should have died exactly 40 years ago. She should have died. And I started doing the math. She was healed at that church service on January 30th, exactly 40 years ago. So God, rather than take her, had extended her life 40 years. But then it had to match, though, because she died on February 2nd. And I went back and checked, and the Wednesday night where she got healed was the last Wednesday night in January of that year. And that date was January 30th. So that upset me, because that doesn't match. So if it's from the Lord, it's got to match in my heart. I mean, it's got to match. Otherwise, I'm not buying. So the Lord just kept saying, we'll go back and study King Hezekiah. So I went back. And so I'm going to read one verse to it. Just hang on. So in 2 Kings, it's the 20th chapter, verse 5, it says this. It says, go back to Hezekiah, the leader of my people, and tell him that he will get the promise. Now listen to it. It says, tell him he has to wait 3 days and then go to the temple and he'll receive the promise. Wait 3 days. Well, she was healed on January 30th. Add 3 days, 31st, February 1st, February 2nd, and she passed exactly February 2nd, 40 years and exactly 3 days. So God didn't take her from me. I witnessed, I experienced the King Hezekiah miracle where she got life extended for 40 years plus the 3 days.
Wow.
So it wasn't that he took her, and then I started reflecting back, and that's why when she got the cancer, it all went away. I mean, it all went away until exactly the season when the carbon monoxide, when winter hit and the furnace came on, when all of that, so we relived that little season. That's when it came back. But prior to winter setting in, even with the diagnosis with cancer, she had no symptoms, she had nothing. But exactly 40 years later, she experienced it. And I was doing the same caregiving. I was doing it all. We relived it all. And then this time, she went home. And God knew that her faith was so strong, so he kept sending angels to her to tell her she was really going to go home. That's why she was seeing all those angels. And he really did take her home. And he didn't let me figure it out till afterward, which was a blessing. Because if I had known in advance that she wasn't going to make it, I would have been devastated. So I didn't figure it out until after she was gone, but now I got it that she should have died 40 years ago. She should have died. God graciously extended her, not 15 years, but 40, and he gave her the 40 plus the 3 days. I went back and I was rereading the scripture that had been put on my heart, Psalm 40, so it's 40 years. But verse 6 says, literally, it says this, quote, and now you finally understand. That's literally what it says. So listen to me. So now you finally understand what really happened. So I want you to all understand that all of you that prayed for my wife, I'm grateful. But what you didn't know, and I didn't know at the time, is you were actually participants and witnesses to a miracle that was actually happening. She should have died 40 years ago. God extended her life 40 years, but then 40 years plus the 3 days, we got the 3 days. And then when she went home. And I watched her that morning when she passed. She had been she was laying there and was kind of out of it and so forth. And all of a sudden, inexplicably, she looked, she raised, she got a big smile on her face, her hands started to raise, and then she was gone. So I believe the angels came and got her. And that was it. So I wanted you all to know that when you prayed for her, that it wasn't that your prayers weren't answered. That you and I didn't realize that we were part of we were witnessing a process that we didn't fully understand. I was sharing this with my son. He lives in Atlanta now. He was there. And I'm sharing with my son, to which he says, Dad, do you not remember what happened over Christmas last year? And she was, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Quote, Dad, we had a gas leak while Mom was sick. And we had to call Alabama Power out to our house. And they found a carbon monoxide gas leak, just a small one, just this one, wasn't a big deal. And the power company was out at your house. It says, I took them and showed them, and they fixed it. And that was right before she passed. Just a little reminder. I had forgot it. I was so focused on her, I really didn't even pay attention, but my son took care of it all. So just as a little reminder, right before she passed, we had a little carbon monoxide leak right here in the house here in Tuscaloosa. The power company came out and took care of it, and they said, wow, had a little leak, but I don't know what that's about. That was just God just reminding me. So I went back in my thoughts to this guy who's preaching to me in Sky Bridge at MD Anderson, and he kept saying to me, you need to understand, he just got right in front of me and he said, God sent me to tell you there's a plan, and there's always a plan. Never doubt there's a plan. It doesn't matter what you're saying, God has a plan. And I want to tell you, God has a plan. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. And sometimes it's hard and it's not easy. And I'll close with this. Thank you for letting me share this. Not only does God do the miraculous, which I just shared, but there are seasons of suffering that everyone will go through. And I am absolutely convinced that her testimony was greatest in the season of suffering. She walked her faith. She never doubted. She got welcomed into heaven. I really think sometimes your testimony is the greatest when things are difficult. And you're going to have seasons of suffering. That doesn't mean God left you, God abandoned you, God broke a promise. It's not how that works. Every disciple died a martyr. Every one of them. God expects you to run a race. In Hebrews chapter 12, it talks about we're all expected to run the race. But depending upon which translation you read, it says run the race with endurance, or some translations say run the race with perseverance. So I want to, in close, I want to just tell you something that you really need to get down deep. When you run a race with endurance, that means endurance, you're trying to get yourself more physically fit. Increase your stamina, increase your strength. You want to run the race so that you're not overly tired and weary, that you're getting yourself conditioned. That's endurance, so that you have the endurance to run the race. So you need endurance to run the race, spiritually. But perseverance, and most of the translations put the word perseverance in there. It says run the race with perseverance. Perseverance is when you overcome adversity. That means you're running a race and the other racers are not friendly. You're in a competition, you're in a battle. It's not like a race like you're running around laps. It's more like an obstacle course. And the competition is difficult and there's adversity. Perseverance is the ability to overcome adversity. It's the ability to withstand the battle and the conflict and the fight, because you live in a fallen world. And that's why you're told to armor up, to suit up. It's not a race that you can run without the armor. It's not a friendly race. It's a race that you better suit up and have the whole armor on, because the other competitors, the other team, would like your destruction. They don't want you even in the race, much less win the race. It's a battle. Think of the race not as like a friendly jog around the schoolyard playground. Think of the race more as storming the beach of a war zone. That's more what it is. That's the kind of race it is. And so it's difficult. So you need to get suited up get your armor on, get all of that. As you run your race, there's going to be seasons of adversity that you have to be able to handle. And it's not just endurance, meaning, well, if I do my Bible reading and I do, that's all good and that strengthens you personally, but you've got to be able to persevere through adversity where the enemy really attacks. And just as a reminder, this earth is not your home. It's not. You're not, your best life is not here. So she's in heaven, and I know she's there because she kept telling me about all these angels she was seeing all the time, and so I know she's there. And that's a story for another night. And I recorded them all. I'm actually writing a book on angels. And the national ministry, as I mentioned, has heard her story, and they're going to publish it and send it out nationally. So it's going to do a good thing. And you say, well, why does God do these things? And I'll shut up. So I miss her terribly. So I was trying to figure out how do I go on, to be honest. And everything in town reminds me of her, so that becomes kind of the challenge for me. So I started going to, I don't know how to cook, and that's where she took care of it. So I go out to eat all the time. I went to a restaurant that I had never really paid much attention to and got involved. And the guy that owns the restaurant's a good Christian. He's got a heart for missions. One thing leads to another. We end up, you can't make this stuff up. I've lived in this town 20 years. I've never been to this restaurant. Pastor's Kitchen, little Mexican restaurant. Pastor Garcia owns the restaurant. We now own a church. It was gifted to us. It's a $1.3 million building that had storm damage, and the buyers backed out. They found out that we had a heart for serving, so they gave it to Pastor Garcia for $1.
Wow.
It needs to have a lot of work done. We were able to get that done. So at Thanksgiving, we were able to get occupancy on just the kitchen part. The sanctuary is still under disrepair. Thanksgiving, even though we had tornado warnings and inclement weather, on the day we served 800 people for free, gave food away for free, had over 200 Christian volunteers come. Next week, 22nd of December, we're giving food away for Christmas. We'll feed probably 1,000. You're welcome to help come serve if you like. It's caught the attention now. Now there's about 8 churches in town that want to partner and grow the ministry. We had a meeting today. It's growing faster hardly than we can want. I've been asked to go brief the Northport City Council next week because they want to, it's just growing. We've started an entire, I'm on my way next week. I'm meeting with Highlands College. They have a program in global missions. They want to hear about us. There's a missionary from Australia who's moved here, wants to participate. We've got a Hispanic pastor who's coming to actually, so it's all snowballed. So we now have a ministry, we have a church, we're doing all that. God has a plan. I would have never done that had my life not taken a turn. So God has a plan. And there's seasons of suffering. But that's when your testimony is the strongest. Last comment. Right after Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, it talks about running the race. Just drop down like 2 more verses It's either verse 4 or verse 5. The writer of Hebrews, he's trying to encourage the Hebrews. And he literally says, you can look it up. He literally says to them, well, you haven't had to shed your blood yet. That's literally what he says. Run your race. And then he says, do what you got to do. Oh, will there be hardship and suffering? Yeah. That's when your testimony is strong. And then he says, you haven't had to shed your blood yet. Like your other brothers and sisters are already being martyred. So it might be tough. But that's part of service. Because the reward's in heaven. Right there in that verse, right there it also says, and to he that overcomes will be given the crown of life. And you'll get the opportunity to eat from the tree of life and drink from the river of life. And I'll spend the rest of eternity with Miss Janice. So we're only separated for a short season. In fact, most of our marriage and relationship is still ahead, not behind. Yeah. Many more years ahead. Eternal years. Not 40 years. So God bless you. I'm going to give you a write-up that they asked me to write, so I'll give that to you. Can I pray for you? Heavenly Father, I thank you for this privilege of sharing our story with them. Lord, let it increase their faith. Let it, Lord, motivate their hearts for service. God, use this time to launch ministries. Lord, help your work to be done wherever we are, wherever we live, wherever we serve. Lord, help your will to be done. Use us. We know you'll equip us for whatever you call us to do. Help us to have the courage and the fortitude. Lord, help us to have endurance and perseverance. Because when we add endurance and perseverance to our faith, when we add endurance and perseverance to our faith, that's when the miraculous happens. That's when things get done. So I ask, Lord, that you would take these young people, bless their lives. Let this night be a night of reflection and encouragement to them that you're real. It's not just stories, it's real, and we're living it out. And everything that you've done in the past, you're able to do in the future. We give you our worship and our praise.